Today, I am going to tell you a tale, but not just any tale. An internet horror story that at its core is one of the most disturbing video game creepypastas ever created. There will be a lot to take in during this video, as the narrative is quite long. First, I will be establishing a lengthy synopsis of the creepypasta as a whole, while simultaneously analyzing and dissecting key moments, characters, and symbolism. After that, I will discuss the story in retrospective fashion by exploring its impact on modern-day creepypastas, then end it all off by interpreting where the future of this story will go next. So sit back, relax, maybe grab yourself a snack, and prepare yourself for the infamous story behind the one and only. The 1980s is one of the most influential decades in video game history. If you were around during this time, you would have witnessed the rise and fall of all things gaming. Up until 1983, various consoles and titles were being pushed out left and right, many of these titles being extremely similar to others. It was at this point when the infamous video game crash of 1983, also known as the Atari crash in Japan, spawned a tidal wave that saturated the worldwide video game market. Fortunately, this crash only lasted a few years, and it gave the opportunity for the soon-to-be influential video game corporation, Nintendo, to step in. In October 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System was released in North America. With iconic launch titles such as Duck Hunt, Wrecking Crew, and Super Mario Bros., the system exceeded all expectations as family households rushed to purchase this device, thus reviving the once deceased video game market. This in turn paved the way for other corporations to succeed, such as Sega with Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sony with the debut of the PlayStation. But with the NES came many interesting games, one of which was released a mere few years after the launch of the console. Godzilla, Monster of Monsters, released in December 1988, is a game where you play as Godzilla and Mothra, fighting giant monsters on each planet across the solar system, aiming to reach Planet X, where King Ghidorah awaits a final battle. The gameplay is what you would expect for a late 1980s title. You start on Earth, which is represented by a hexagonal map, where you can move either Godzilla or Mothra in a chess-like pattern. Each of these hexagons contains a playable side-scrolling level, where enemies attack and shoot at you. The goal is to advance both Godzilla and Mothra to the next planet by finishing the base headquarters level on the opposite end of each map. In addition to this, there are between 2 to 8 monster boss battles on each planet that attempt to block you as you progress. These giant monsters, also known as kaiju, move on the map like you do, and if you happen to move beside one or have one move right next to you, a battle will begin. During these battles, you have roughly 40 seconds to defeat the kaiju, and if done successfully, they will disappear from the map and you may continue on. The entire game consists of 8 worlds, these being Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, and Planet X. On these planets, you will encounter a total of 8 monsters, 7 of which are often found repeated across multiple worlds. These 7 are Godzilla, Moguera, Varan, Baragon, Hedorah, Gigan, and Mechagodzilla. The last one, King Ghidorah, is a super strong kaiju that may only be found during the endgame on Planet X. But you're probably wondering how such a simple NES game like this could have anything remotely terrifying attached to it. Well, there's something dark that came from this title a mere 2 decades after its release that spawned a revolution of video game horror stories alike. The NES Godzilla creepypasta is regarded as one of the most disturbing, legendary, and lengthy video game creepypastas of all time. Originally submitted to the horror site Bogleach by user CosbyDaff in 2011, it has become most notable for containing various amounts of screenshots that add to the realism of the story. The creepypasta is told from the perspective of a man named Zachary, who recounts the night he received a Godzilla, monster of monsters, from his childhood friend Billy. The reason Zachary received this game is because of his obsession with it as a child. He states how he was gifted it for his birthday back in the day, but later traded it in for another game, something he regretted for many years. After booting up the cartridge and being flooded with nostalgia, everything began as normal. The title sequence, first world, and levels were all like he remembered, up until that first fight with Godzilla, that is. You see, partially through battle, the game glitched out, and Zach had a hard time getting any attacks in. Like I said earlier, battles only last for a maximum of 40 seconds at a time, before you have to restart and try again. But Zach explains, this fight lasted for 5 minutes, before the entire screen began glitching, and became unplayable. As most NES players would, he pulled the cartridge out from the console, blew in it, and reset the game. Afterwards, everything seemed back to normal. Zachary finished playing Earth with nothing out of the ordinary and proceeded to the next level, Mars. But this is where problems began arising again. After defeating Godzilla for a second time, the screen began glitching out again, this time with Godzilla's eye spawning all over the screen in a dark red color. At this point in the narrative, Zack proclaims his regret on ignoring these glitches, foreshadowing something more sinister later on in the story. But of course, as most creepypastas go, he continues on anyway. In the next boss battle, he encounters Moguera, this time twice the size he is normally. After a swift fight, instead of sinking to the bottom of the screen after death, as per usual, Moguera's sprite shattered and began melting, which of course never actually happens in the real game. Then, strange enough, Zack found the next monster to be Titanosaurus, a kaiju never before seen in the original game. Nothing strange happened during this battle, which led Zack to believe he must have an early copy of the game, which would explain the glitches, never before seen effects, and new monsters. After fighting his way to victory and proceeding through Earth's headquarters level, He expected to be greeted by the word Jupiter, but instead was confronted with a new planet, Pathos. If you thought things were wrong before, then this is the moment when everything in the game broke down. Upon initial glance of the world map, Zack noticed many irregularities from the game he remembered. Instead of green, the color of the map was blue. The level icons changed from their usual shape to strange rock-like structures. The music was also more ominous, giving Zack an unsettling feeling. And in addition to these changes, he noticed a new character on the board, Biolante, who wasn't even created until 1989, a whole year after the creation of Godzilla NES. Zack kept convincing himself this was still an unreleased version of the game, possibly even created to hype up the upcoming 1989 Godzilla movie at the time. But oh, was he so wrong. The levels were ominously empty, void of all enemies and ambience. In contrast to the unsettling red moon above the player's head. But it wasn't until the boss battles where things took a wild turn. Although their kaiju on the board looked as they normally do, the monsters during battle were completely wrong in every way possible. These mutated beasts, like most things shown so far, were never ever seen in the original game. In fact, none of them even currently exist within the entire Godzilla universe. And I know I keep saying this over and over, but bear with me for a moment here. Although these moments Zack experienced could be described as eerie, unnatural, and/or disturbing, they aren't even the most unforgiving part of this narrative, as it's at the end of Pathos where the most pivotal moment of the game steps in. The moment that changes everything about this story.